In the heart of the Black Sea, a 6-meter-long unmanned craft, cloaked in cold steel-gray paint, surges forward at nearly 90 kilometers per hour. On Russian radar, there is complete silence. At the Boyko drilling platform, soldiers are casually sipping tea, unaware of the danger. They have only seconds left to live. Then, a deafening explosion shakes the sea. A 1-ton explosive charge developed by Ukraine strikes the platform's critical connection point, the linchpin holding the massive steel structure together in the deep sea. In an instant, the entire military base built by Russia over years is consumed by a sea of fire. The terrifying truth is that just minutes earlier, a drone, an FPV model costing less than $500, had soared like a bird through the sky, completely destroying the Neva radar, Russia's primary surveillance asset in the northwest Black Sea. 2 small weapons, 2 pinpoint strikes, and an entire Russian military symbol vanishes from the map. This is no longer a war of battleships or cruise missiles. This is a war where intelligence has outmaneuvered a colossal defense system. Welcome to the B-21 Raider channel, where conflicts are not just recounted, but dissected through the lens of an expert. Today we'll dive into the analysis of a historic turning point in this conflict, where Russia is no longer the one calling the shots. At 9:20 a.m., a flash explosion rocks the northwest Black Sea. A column of gray smoke rises from one of the most critical military drilling platforms under Russian control. The Neva radar, the electronic eye monitoring the sea, is completely destroyed. But the significance lies not in the scale of the blast, but in the weapon that caused it. A single FPV drone costing less than $500, operated by a Ukrainian intelligence officer from a secret underground bunker on Snake Island. That's right, just $500 to paralyze a radar system worth tens of millions of dollars. What is really happening here? And why are military experts calling this attack a game changer in modern warfare? Let's rewind to the full context. On the morning of May 19, 2025, a team of technicians from Ukraine's Security Service, SBU, receives a signal from Strategic Command. They are monitoring weather, wind patterns, humidity, and even the frequency emissions of the Neva radar system. At the controls is an officer codenamed Wolf, one of Ukraine's top FPV drone operators. The drone in use is a 10-inch quadcopter with a lightweight carbon frame, powered by 4 rotors, spinning at 20,000 RPM, carrying a 3-kilogram explosive charge. At a glance, it might look like a toy, but when aimed at a weak point, such as the signal transmission circuit, the antenna receiver, or the radar's antenna junction, a small explosion is enough to reduce a multi-ton system to scrap metal. And indeed, Russia's Neva radar was the perfect target. Deployed by Russia since Soviet times, the Neva radar, part of the KB series, can scan a 45-kilometer radius. According to a report from the Black Sea Institute in London, it can simultaneously track 200 targets and provide firing coordinates for artillery, anti-ship missiles, and fighter jets. For months, it has been one of the biggest obstacles thwarting Ukraine's counteroffensives in the Black Sea region. To pave the way for larger attacks, the Neva radar had to be eliminated, and this time Ukraine chose a method more precise than any missile. FPV drones are not new to the Ukrainian battlefield, but the way Ukraine employs them, combining virtual reality FPV technology, interference-resistant analog transmissions, and creative tactics, has turned them into the most haunting asymmetrical weapon for Russia. From a bunker on Snake Island, Wolf dons VR goggles, seeing through the drone's eyes. The scene unfolds like a war video game, but this is reality. The drone flies low, under 50 meters, evading radar detection. Its zigzag flight path avoids the scanning arcs of the rotating antenna. On the screen, the Boyko Tower platform looms into view, standing over 40 meters above the sea, with the Neva radar antenna perched at its peak. Wolf adjusts the approach, maintaining a perfect angle, 800 meters, 500 meters, 200 meters. At this range, Russian soldiers begin to notice an object hurtling toward them. Some point and shout, one grabs a rifle, but it's too late. In less than 10 seconds, the drone slams into the radar antenna and detonates. The explosion isn't massive, it doesn't need to be, but the strike is perfect. The signal transmission structure is shattered, the receiver circuits are incinerated, and the entire antenna rotation system is blown apart. The Neva radar, after decades of service in Cold War and modern conflicts, is reduced to a smoking pile of wreckage. The Russian forces on the Boyko platform are plunged into tactical blindness. They can no longer detect objects on the water's surface or spot approaching drones. And this is only the opening move. The question arises, how could an FPV drone worth half a month's Netflix subscription accomplish what an elite commando unit might take weeks to achieve? The answer lies in the changing nature of modern warfare. With deep support from the United States, Ukraine has relentlessly applied new technology to asymmetrical attack strategies. From control chips to VR cameras to jam-resistant navigation systems, everything has been fine-tuned and upgraded based on technology transferred from the US. Under President Donald Trump's administration, a program to provide non-traditional technological aid to Ukraine was launched. Between 2018 and 2021, a series of research grants for drones, anti-radar systems, and electronic warfare were approved, totaling over $4.1 billion. Trump once stated, "The wars of the future won't need tanks, but intelligence, speed, and absolute precision." And now a single FPV drone assembled in a small workshop in Kyiv has brought that vision to life. But make no mistake, the Neva radar was just the eye. Ukraine's real target is the steel heart of the Boyko platform, and a far more terrifying weapon is closing in. What do you think about a $500 drone paralyzing a base worth tens of millions? Has modern warfare entered an era where expensive no longer means invincible? Share your thoughts below. Back to the battle. As the Neva radar is destroyed and Russian soldiers on the Boyko platform are still reeling from the FPV drone's explosion, a cold gray shadow glides silently across the sea. This is the Sea Baby, an unmanned vessel designed for a mission no patrol ship or cruise missile could execute better. The Sea Baby, a compact monster of asymmetrical warfare, races forward at nearly 90 kilometers per hour, carrying a ton of high-tech explosives. This time the target isn't just a radar, but the very backbone of the Boyko Tower base. Let's pause for a moment to understand why the Sea Baby is considered a leap forward in naval warfare. Unlike the cheap, easily built FPV drone, the Sea Baby is the product of over 2 years of covert research at SBU technical facilities, combined with US military navigation technology. This specialized surface drone, 6 meters long, is powered by 2 jet engines housed within its hull. Its exterior is coated with radar-absorbing paint in NATO standard sea gray, rendering it nearly invisible to Russian detection. In rough seas or early mornings, like that of May 19th, 2025, the Sea Baby blends perfectly with the water. No engine noise, no heat signature, and, most critically, undetectable by Russian reconnaissance systems. The Sea Baby's standout feature is its shape-charge explosive design. Unlike conventional suicide boats with a single explosive block, the Sea Baby uses funnel-shaped charges arranged around the bow. When detonated, these create a directed piercing effect, focusing maximum energy on a single point, melting through reinforced concrete and load-bearing steel pillars. The explosives inside, a mix of RDX and TNT, produce flames exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius, hotter than the melting point of steel. With these specifications, the Boyko platform is no longer a fixed structure but an ideal target for testing the Sea Baby's destructive power. Yet its control capabilities are even more remarkable. The Sea Baby doesn't rely solely on GPS. It integrates inertial navigation, speed sensors, high-resolution optical cameras, and real-time control via satellite through a US encrypted channel for Ukraine's SBU. If Russia jams electronic signals, the Sea Baby continues its attack using internal backup systems. Throughout its journey, the operator can adjust angles, select impact points, or redirect the target at the last second, a capability even Russia's Kalibr cruise missiles lack. At 9:15 a.m., the Sea Baby is 30 kilometers from the Boyko platform. Russian soldiers are oblivious, stepping into a battlefield with no escape. The Neva radar is gone. Surface reconnaissance now relies on the naked eye. Their remaining observation tools are a few binoculars and handheld radios to contact command hundreds of kilometers away. That's all they have. The Sea Baby presses forward. Its high-resolution camera streams live footage to the command station. Smoke from the Neva radar explosion still rises. Ukrainian engineers in Kiev see every technical block, every support column, every living quarter on the platform. Detailed intelligence comes from US satellite imagery provided by the Pentagon in advance. Nothing is left to chance. Every structure has been analyzed and mapped, and this time the target isn't the radar but the connection point between the main drilling block and the living quarters, where the central control systems are housed. Why this point? Because according to technical assessments, striking this junction would tilt the entire platform and trigger a domino effect collapse. This isn't just destruction. It's the complete dismantling of a 40-meter steel structure in the heart of the sea. At 9:35, the Sea Baby is just 10 kilometers from the target, accelerating to its maximum speed, 49 knots per hour. At this point, the drone is no longer a vehicle but a 6-ton artillery shell, guided by artificial intelligence. Russian soldiers begin to notice a dark shape speeding across the sea. Some shout, some raise rifles, some call for help, but no one knows where to shoot. The target is low, fast, and virtually invisible to radar. Meanwhile, the Sea Baby activates its final guidance system. The camera locks onto the pre-selected point. The explosive charges are primed. The onboard computer makes hundreds of adjustments per second. And then at 9:50, just seconds after the engine's final roar, the Sea Baby slams into the connection point between the drilling block and the living quarters and detonates. There is no warning, no siren, only a blinding white flash like the sun rising over the sea. A 300-meter column of fire erupts, with the blast's core exceeding 3,500 degrees Celsius. Steel melts, concrete shatters, staircases collapse, and main pillars snap like twigs. Within less than 5 minutes, the entire upper structure of the Boyko platform collapses into the sea, reduced to a smoldering heap of twisted metal. The surviving Russian soldiers, trapped on burning debris, have no rescue, no escape route, stranded over 100 kilometers from land and waters, where Ukraine holds absolute tactical dominance. The question now is this: Is Russia facing an opponent not only driven by fighting spirit, but also capable of turning low-cost technology into weapons that reshape the entire war? With strategic support from the United States and sophisticated technology transfers from the Trump era, what other surprises might Ukraine unleash? This is the war's turning point. At 9:50 a.m., a cataclysmic explosion tears through the sea. In less than a second, a platform weighing thousands of tons, reinforced with high-strength steel, shakes as if hit by an earthquake, then collapses in a chain reaction. The blast's core exceeds 3,500 degrees Celsius, melting steel into rivers and pulverizing concrete into dust. The living quarters where Russian soldiers were stationed vanish in a flash. The destruction doesn't follow a typical explosion cycle but a slow burn, eroding the structure from within. This is no longer an attack. It's a pre-written death sentence for Russia's Black Sea base. Why did the Sea Baby attack? Cause destruction beyond all predictions? The answer lies in the technical nature of the Boyko platform. It wasn't a purely military structure. Russia had converted a civilian gas platform into a semi-permanent base. This meant most of its load-bearing systems retained civilian designs, while the weight, equipment, and troop density far exceeded permitted limits. It was a fortress built on the foundation of a floating warehouse. When the Sea Baby struck the junction between the drilling platform and the living quarters, the entire framework became unbalanced. The main pillars gave way, steel decks shattered in sequence, and an internal collapse spread from left to right. All military equipment, radars, communication stations, ammunition reserves, was flung into the sea. This raises a serious question. Why did Russia use a gas platform as a forward command post? Was it because they ran out of land-based deployment sites, or to evade satellite and cruise missile tracking? According to a report from the U.S. National Defense Strategy Institute, Boyko Tower served as the anchor for Russia's entire surveillance network in the northwest Black Sea. It relayed radar signals to Crimea, synchronized telecommunications with warship radars, and even housed Russian naval special forces teams. The platform was a floating communication hub, a critical link between operational zones. When this link was broken, the entire system descended into chaos. Just 30 minutes after the explosion, communications between Russian warships and the Crimea coast base were noticeably disrupted. The Pentagon recorded multiple signals from the Black Sea Fleet, but none received a response from Boyko. Russia launched an investigation. When satellite imagery from U.S. commercial satellites like Planet Labs was released, the world saw a blackened sea filled with smoke, oil spills, and the smoldering remains of the platform. A smoke column rose over 1 kilometer. Flames from the auxiliary fuel depot burned for 6 hours straight. Each leaking oil drum exploded in clusters, creating a natural incendiary bomb effect. The main tower tilted like a rotting tree and collapsed into the water, a scene straight out of an oceanic hell. A Ukrainian military engineer described it. This wasn't just physical destruction, it was strategic annihilation. Russia didn't just lose a platform, it lost command capability in the northwest Black Sea. Surviving Russian soldiers on the platform's remnants couldn't escape. Fires spread, pathways collapsed, and lifeboats were either blown away or incinerated. Russian helicopters couldn't approach due to thick smoke. The platform's frame radiated hundreds of degrees, delaying even maritime rescue efforts as no one dared approach a debris-filled zone at risk of further explosions. Finally, over 40 hours later, Russia sent a salvage team to the site. All they found were twisted steel blocks, charred equipment husks, and fragments of a burned Russian flag still caught in the antenna frame. The attack's impact wasn't just material but psychological. Throughout the Ukraine war from 2022 onward, Russia relied on offshore bases to maintain control over the Black Sea. They believed Ukraine couldn't strike that far. They thought the sea was a natural barrier. But Ukraine, with U.S. technological support, proved otherwise. During Donald Trump's presidency, programs for developing drone technology, positioning systems, and commercial satellite data were unlocked. The U.S. didn't just supply weapons, it supplied a mindset, the mindset of 21st century warfare, where intelligence and speed outweigh numbers and scale. Now the Boyko platform, once a symbol of Russian sea control, has been erased by two strikes, one from the air, one from the sea. Both came from weapons developed by Ukraine but wouldn't have succeeded without U.S. technological foundations. So the question is, if a heavily fortified, equipped, and guarded offshore base can be destroyed so quickly, are the bases deep in Crimea or even radar stations on Russian soil truly safe? Darkness looms over Russia. The Boyko platform was once a symbol, a towering stronghold in the Black Sea, a silent declaration from Russia. We can control any sea we want. But in just 45 minutes, that symbol was wiped off the map, not by hypersonic missiles or nuclear submarines, but by two drones, one flying in the air, costing less than $500, the other gliding beneath the sea, designed in garages and labs, requiring no complex command systems or fleet coordination, just a timely decision and a smart strategy. This wasn't just a battle, it was a strategic victory for asymmetrical warfare, a war where the weak, with enough intelligence and creativity, can defeat the strong. Immediately after the attack, global defense analysts hailed this as a turning point in modern warfare history. For the first time, an offshore base was completely obliterated without a single warship. An expert from the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London remarked, "If you're a Russian Navy admiral, you won't sleep well after that night." Boyko wasn't just a naval outpost, it was a critical hub for logistics, information, and resupply. It supported missile targeting from land, relayed signals from offshore warships, stored radar components and mid-range munitions, hosted 24/7 operations by the Cascade Special Forces Unit under Russia's General Staff, and served as an invisible pillar for controlling the western Crimea Sea Zone. After the platform's destruction, Russian activities in the Black Sea dropped by 36%, according to a UK Ministry of Defense report. Russian patrol ships hugged the coast. Radar positions lost connectivity, and Ukraine's new sea drones continued to close in on remaining naval points. Russia no longer fully controls the sea. They're just avoiding being sunk. So why did the loss of one platform trigger such a devastating domino effect? The answer lies in psychology. Russia is known for its rigid control doctrine, believing strength lies in scale and intimidation. Bigger ships, stronger radars, longer range missiles. But Ukraine chose a different path. No direct confrontation, no need for excess, just precision and accuracy. Recall President Donald Trump's words during a 2019 visit to the Arlington Weapons Development Center. The U.S. won't enter the future with bigger aircraft carriers, but with smaller, faster, smarter microprocessors. We don't need to dominate in numbers. We must lead in technology. That vision has now materialized on Ukraine's battlefield. The Sea Baby isn't just a weapon, it's the culmination of a nearly 5-year U.S.-Ukraine technological partnership. From high-tech aid programs signed under Trump to civilian satellite data shared by U.S. companies, to interference-resistant communication encryption provided by the U.S. to Ukraine's electronic warfare units. Together, they've created a new technological warfare ecosystem, a war that needs no tanks or bombers, only intelligence and 256-bit encrypted software. U.S. support has helped Ukraine bridge a decades-long technological gap with Russia, making offshore steel giants as fragile as paper. This prompts a broader question. Does the future of warfare have room for traditional weapons, or is it now the domain of drones, AI, and real-time data? A NATO naval commander told the BBC privately, "We no longer value floating bases as we once did. One hit from a sea baby and everything's gone." No one says it publicly, but Russia is steadily losing control of the Black Sea, not because Ukraine grew too strong too fast, but because Russia's defense strategy is outdated. After the Boyko incident, Russia's general staff was forced to withdraw all radar units to the mainland, bolster anti-drone systems at Sevastopol bases, and halt resupply ship deployments in the Western Sea Zone. These decisions stemmed from a single, precise strike, using asymmetrical technology. The victory wasn't just in destructive power, but in the message it sent. Any offshore base, no matter how large, if not protected by modern strategy, will be destroyed in an instant. More crucially, it was a psychological triumph. For the first time, Ukrainians witnessed a symbol of Russian control burning brightly in their sea and sky. From Kiev to Odessa, images of the smoking platform spread with pride. It was a victory needing no propaganda, just the truth. What about the world? Smaller nations from Poland and Latvia to Taiwan are watching closely. They see that with the right technological mindset and support, you can defeat a superpower. Modern warfare has turned a page. This new chapter isn't written in steel and fire, but in chips and data, drones and encrypted software, determination and strategic vision, a vision Donald Trump emphasized throughout his presidency. No one can defeat America if America remains number one in defense technology. Now the question is, after Boyko, which base is next? Which radar station? Is Moscow still safe? Thank you for watching our analysis of this conflict's developments. Here we don't just tell stories. We dissect every move, every tactic, every shadow behind each battle. If you're passionate about geopolitics, military power, and what's really happening behind the global battlefield's curtain, the B21 Raider channel is for you. Don't forget to subscribe, as each video paints a new picture full of data, analysis, and truths not everyone dares to speak. And if you find this content compelling, leave a comment to share your perspective. War isn't a game and every viewpoint matters.